Welcome back to another Explainer. Think of me as your guest professor today as we travel back in time to explore the life, the reign, and the frankly unbelievable legacy of an extraordinary 14th century ruler of the Mali Empire. We are looking at a historical figure whose wealth and influence quite literally reshaped the map of the world. So let's jump right into this.
Here is our syllabus for today's Explainer. First, Emperor of Gold. Second, the vastness of the Mali Empire. Third, the historic Hajj journey. Fourth, the expansion of education and culture. Fifth, transformation on maps. And finally, a quick review for you students.
All right, Section 1, Emperor of Gold.
So Mansa Musa was born around 1280. He was the nephew of the Mali Empire's legendary founder, Sundiata Keita, and he officially took the throne in 1307. Now, he stepped into power over an already prosperous Mali Empire, sure, but he took it to an absolute next level. I want you to picture the number 10. Why? Because according to historical accounts, the guy had so much gold that he could have literally paved a 10-kilometer pathway entirely out of solid gold bricks. Seriously. To put that massive scale into perspective, even if you look at historical titans like Augustus Caesar, the incredibly wealthy banking families of the Renaissance, or even today's tech billionaires, Musa's personal control over the world's most valuable resource was, well, basically unrivaled. We're studying what I like to call the golden ripple effect of his entire reign.
Because of that sheer volume of wealth, modern analysts, including folks over at Time magazine, have basically just thrown their hands in the air. They've officially concluded that there is simply no accurate way to quantify Musa's wealth. It's totally off the charts. And why is that? Well, during his highly successful reign, the Mali Empire was likely the largest producer of gold in the entire world. When your empire controls the ultimate source of global wealth, your riches just absolutely shatter all conventional financial scales.
Moving right along to Section 2, Vastness of the Mali Empire.
To really wrap our heads around this wealth, we have to understand the geopolitical reality of his power. The word Mansa actually translates to sultan, conqueror, or emperor, and let me tell you, he lived up to the name. His geopolitical footprint was staggering. He commanded territories that make up modern-day Guinea, Senegal, Mauritania, Gambia, and Mali. He systematically expanded the empire by conquering 24 different cities, fully absorbing the former Ghana Empire in the process. And with all that vast land came these incredibly immense titles. Things like Emir of Menele, Lord of the Mines of Wangara, and Conqueror of Ganata. This wasn't just a kingdom, you know. It was an undisputed medieval superpower.
Okay, Section 3, the historic Hajj journey. So, between 1324 and 1325, Mansa Musa embarked on a deeply religious pilgrimage to Mecca. And this is really the event that put him on the global map. It made him the very first African ruler to become widely recognized across Europe and the Middle East. But guys, this was not just some quiet spiritual retreat. No way. We are talking about a royal caravan made up of 60,000 travelers. Among them were 500 enslaved individuals, and each one of them was carrying a solid gold staff. Plus, he brought along a massive fleet of 80 to 100 camels. And here's the kicker. Every single camel was loaded down with about 140 kilograms of gold dust. Just try to imagine the blinding glimmer of the sun hitting all that gold as this massive moving city slowly crossed the desert.
Tracing the actual geographic path of this incredible caravan, they departed from the heart of the Mali Empire, then made a really pivotal stopover in Cairo, Egypt, before finally arriving in Mecca to fulfill his religious duties. But let's actually zero in on that stop in Cairo for a second, because what happened there is literally still referenced by economists today.
When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, he was incredibly generous. He gave away millions upon millions in gold, handed it out to the poor, to officials, to local merchants. But here is the fascinating, unintended economic consequence of that action: the Cairo gold market crash. You see, his generosity flooded the local market with so much gold that the sudden, massive supply caused the regional price and value of gold to just plummet. And it stayed depressed for several years. Imagine being so ridiculously wealthy that your mere presence and your charity inadvertently crashes the entire macroeconomic system of a major global city. Crazy, right?
Which brings us to Section 4, Expansion of Education and Culture.
You know, it's really easy to get distracted by all that shiny gold, but Musa was far more than just a wealthy king. Under his highly stable reign, he proved to be a massive intellect and a dedicated patron of science, the arts, literature, and architecture. He brilliantly invested his wealth right back into his people. As the devout Muslim, he aggressively promoted Islamic education, constructing brand new schools all across his territories that were firmly grounded in Quranic teachings.
Beyond that, he sponsored his brightest students, literally paying out of pocket for them to travel and attend prestigious North African Islamic universities. He essentially used his vast resources to build a thriving, highly cultured society that valued higher learning every bit as much as it valued economic dominance.
Next up, Section 5, Transformation on Maps.
Now, this is a super fascinating look at how historical memory changes over time. I mean, who really controls the narrative when an empire's golden age starts to fade? Right after his famous Hajj, 14th century European mapmakers actually drew him incredibly respectfully. They depicted him as a dignified, honored king, completely recognizing his immense global status and wealth. But as the centuries passed and the Mali Empire's power eventually began to wane, those depictions were severely downgraded. Later mapmakers started drawing him as a caricature, labeling him a so-called crowned savage. As your guest professor today, I'm presenting this as a crucial teachable moment. It perfectly illustrates how historical depictions can be dramatically rewritten as global geopolitical power dynamics shift.
All right, Section 6, Review for Students.
Come on, you didn't think you'd get out of this explainer without a quick pop quiz, did you? Let's do a fast, energetic recap just to test your memory of the key takeaways from today's historical analysis. Here is our first review question. What economic impact did Mansa Musa's massive caravan have on the city of Cairo? I'll give you a brief second to recall what happened to the local economy. You got it?
And the answer is, he distributed so much gold that the regional price of gold actually dropped for several years. This perfectly reinforces that lesson about the sheer, unparalleled scale of his caravan's wealth and its very real-world economic power.
Okay, moving right along to question number 2. Besides his immense wealth, how did Mansa Musa strategically invest in the future of the Mali Empire? Try to remember our discussion about his cultural and intellectual legacy.
The answer here is that he built schools all across the empire, he sent his students to North African universities, and he passionately sponsored the arts and architecture. He wasn't just hoarding his fortune in a vault somewhere. He actively used it to fundamentally shape the educational systems of his era, cementing Mali's profound and lasting influence on the wider Islamic world.
And finally, I want to wrap up our explainer and leave you with this somewhat provocative thought for the road. When a historically respected and globally renowned emperor is later drawn as a mere caricature on maps, what does that tell us about who writes history? It's a profound question, and I really want you to carry it with you. Thank you all so much for attending today's class. Keep analyzing, keep exploring, and always remember to question the historical narratives you encounter out there. See you next time.